the de facto co-president, as things stand, of the United States of America, accusing a man who received a standing ovation in Congress from members of all parties just 3 years ago of effectively being some sort of con man. And Musk, I think, believes it because he does seem to live entirely online. So this is such a masterstroke from the Kremlin over the period of 20 years to have just created a completely false discourse, a completely false narrative. And why would the richest man in the world be any more immune to it than your Auntie Doris or that woman I overheard on jury service last week, or countless blue ticks on the platform that Elon Musk has bowdlerized? Why would he be any more immune to this sort of propaganda and these sort of lies than anybody else? Just because he's very, very rich doesn't mean he's possessed of faculties that the rest of us lack. He's very, very good at some stuff. It doesn't mean he's very, very good at critical thinking or working out the difference between truth and lies. And the effort, it's the point we all miss. Unless you've actually fallen for it, you find yourself thinking that the people who have fallen for it must be stupid or must be somehow degenerate, or there must be something wrong with them. But you have to stop thinking like that. It's like contempt for the con men, compassion for the con times a billion, isn't it? They believe stuff that is untrue. And they are not stupid people. They are not particularly gullible. And just because he's the richest man in the world does not mean that he would be any more immune to this than anybody else. So, I mean, he's clearly a very strange man. But I think it's probably a little bit easier to pin him down psychologically than it is his boss, his nominal boss, in that I think he is simply an example of the radicalized online right. He's like the godfather of the radicalized online right. The phone-in we probably won't have time to have today is very much a companion piece to this, because it's about freedom of speech. And Kemi Badenoch the other day saying that since he's bought Twitter, freedom of speech has returned. Nobody can tell me what it is that you're not allowed to say, unless it is just racist lies. But even that is not really very well policed. If you tell racist lies and then encourage people to go and burn down a hotel with asylum seekers in it, you're obviously committing a crime. But if you tell racist lies and don't then encourage people to go and burn down a hotel with asylum seekers in it, you're not committing a crime. The threshold would be very low. So what is this freedom of speech that people like Liz Truss and Elon Musk and Kemi Badenoch keep telling me, and Nigel flipping Farage, he never stops wanging on about it? What is it? That is the phone-in I would have had if Lottie's news bulletin hadn't brought me up short on that looming visit to the United States to be undertaken by Keir Starmer. Some discussion about who's going to get there first, Macron or Starmer, but who cares? That's an example of journalism, isn't it? Journalese. I don't think it matters in the great scheme of things if one of them gets there the day before the other. I don't think it speaks to favours or anything. Macron, if anything, has been a little bit more outspoken about Trump than Starmer has, although Starmer has stated in no uncertain terms that the claim Zelenskyy is a dictator is obviously fallacious, deeply fallacious. So here is the question. Here is the question. What should he do? What should Keir Starmer do? How much has that question changed in the course of this week? I began the week by drawing a distinction between politicians, diplomats and journalists. Keir Starmer's job is to act in the national interest. Identifying what the national interest in a space like this is absolutely bonkers. What is the national interest at a time like this? What is the UK's national interest, and how is it best served when you have an incontinent liar, a verbally incontinent liar, in charge of the United States of America, lying about our allies, siding with our enemies? What on earth is the national interest? And I guess uniquely perhaps, Trump's inconsistency makes the question even more complicated. If Trump was absolutely 100%, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, psychopathic Vladimir Putin puppet, then Starmer's position would possibly be easier. You've got to do what Bill Browder said yesterday. You've got to go after all of the frozen Russian money, use that to replace the role that the United States of America plays, and as other callers suggested, actually start embracing a new world order where the United States is no longer our ally. Goodness knows what that means for places where American planes are currently stationed all across East Anglia and elsewhere, Mildenhall and other places. Goodness knows what that would mean in the context of shared projects and missions overseas. But the idea that you just excise or curtail or cut those links, cut those bonds is becoming increasingly feasible. Mandelson, the most, if I said pragmatic, you'd think it was a compliment. It isn't necessarily. You could say dissembling, a politician who prioritizes progress at every point over anything that could be described as principle or process. He's a fascinating figure, Mandelson. The thing he said about being supremely comfortable with extremely wealthy people, I get slightly exaggerated, but it's really interesting because he is talking about the national interest. It is in our national interest to woo billionaires. And he's not necessarily, I don't think he is wrong. But right now, what is the national interest? Do we throw Ukraine under the bus? I don't think that's going to happen, looking at the noises that have already been made. But the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is due next week to visit our most powerful historical ally, the most powerful ally a country could have historically, this country could have historically, at a time when the ally has allied himself with the enemy, with the regime that sends goons to these islands to murder our citizens, with varying degrees of success. What is the national interest? And what should Keir Starmer do? You can answer one or both of those questions. And this is one of those slightly rare phone-ins where I really don't know. I mean, to be honest, I only decided to do it as a phone-in about 12 minutes ago, so I can't be held to particularly high account for not having an answer to the question myself. But I think I will use my absence of conviction on this as an illustration of how difficult the challenge facing Keir Starmer is. Trump could throw him under the bus in an almighty fashion. And it pains me to say this, but there are elements of the right-wing media in this country that would celebrate the humiliation of our Prime Minister. The Daily Telegraph in particular seems to be in a really ugly place at the moment. I saw a Spectator writer writing about how Trump is right in the context. Still sort of, that might not be perfect, but I love how cross the libs get. I mean, surely that particular line has run out of road now. The idea that he's insulting the leader of Ukraine, and all the usual suspects are getting upset. Not a long list of Donald Trump cheerleaders, not a very long list of Donald Trump cheerleaders who are repenting, and that's ego. That's ego and psychology. That's a fear of shame. But you've got a couple, one or two of broken ranks. Farage, as ever, being very quiet, saying that you can't take Donald Trump literally, but you've got to take him seriously. I don't know what that means. I might remind you of some of the things Nigel Farage has had to say about Vladimir Putin over the years at some point in this hour. But the question I want you to answer is this. What should Keir Starmer do? That's too nebulous. I'm doing that thing again. Press 1 for overthinking and press 2 for a nice simple question. But that's a bit too nebulous. So as a phone-in, that doesn't quite land. What should Keir Starmer do? By all means, ring in. But sometimes I need to finesse the question to get the highest quality of contribution. And of course, when I say what is the national interest at the moment, we go too far the other way. I don't know. What the flipping heck? I don't know. What is the national interest? But you can't really answer either question without answering the other one. What is the national interest? It's very easy to sit here and say the role of diplomats is to serve the national interest, even if that involves doing things that you are uncomfortable doing. You look at some of the comments a politician like David Lammy has made about Donald Trump over the years, and you know that David Lammy is going to be uncomfortable. but he will be serving the national interest by keeping the president sweet. Can't walk into the White House and call him a Kremlin patsy, but he is. And this is where Zelenskyy broke ranks this week when he described accurately Donald Trump inhabiting a bubble of disinformation. And Donald Trump has gone predictably bananas as a consequence. I don't think Keir Starmer can do that. I don't think Keir Starmer can say Donald Trump is telling lies. He can diplomatically say, of course, Zelenskyy is not a dictator. But the idea that they could have somehow stopped the war, you've got Elon Musk essentially accusing Zelenskyy of being some sort of con artist. I mean, make your own list of the most egregious interventions from those two men and some of their allies. See, even a moment ago when I was praising John Healey's speech, which he delivered at the beginning of this week, I forgot that halfway through it, he said we're in a new era of threat that demands a new era for defence. And in the middle of everything else, last week, the new Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth in the US, and I made time to discuss the aims we share on defence reform. Well, we don't share any aims anymore. Did we? Do we? And what aims do we share? What is the national interest if we are talking about a United States of America that wants to withdraw from NATO and give Ukraine in a gift-wrapped box to the murderous kleptocrat in the Kremlin? What does Keir Starmer do? I don't think he can tell the truth. It's not Love Actually, is it? I don't think he can do that. Maybe he can. I don't know. If you don't call it out, you embolden it. If you don't call out the lies, says Chris, you embolden the lies. Yeah, but what's the national interest? I don't think that's a mealy-mouthed intervention. If Keir Starmer goes there and tells the truth and it makes everything worse for the United Kingdom, are you going to applaud him home? Are you going to roll out the red carpet at Heathrow? Donald Trump responds to Keir Starmer's telling the truth by introducing enormous tariffs on all of our exports, crippling companies that have already been brought to their knees by the idiocy of Brexit. Are we going to celebrate? If Keir Starmer provokes Donald Trump by telling the truth in the way that Volodymyr Zelenskyy has done? You tell the truth to this man and he punches you. He hurts you. He tries to hurt you. Tell the truth, he tries to hurt you. So what on earth do you do? Good God, the more I go on about this, the more confusing it gets. What on earth is he going to do? What on earth should he do? What on earth would you do? So you can't dispute the fact that Donald Trump is telling egregious lies about our allies in Ukraine. You can't dispute the fact that he is either completely boiled by or opportunistically pretending to be consumed by a diet of online far-right radicalization. Steve Bannon made a gesture yesterday at this conference in the United States where I suspect old Farage is probably there. Steve Bannon made a gesture which looked suspiciously like a sort of half-hearted Hitler salute, a half-hearted Nazi salute. Someone suggested that's what it looks like when you're not rich enough to sue everybody who says that it's a Nazi salute. It was nowhere near as kind of striking as Elon Musk's. But it is impossible to exaggerate how perilous this moment is, and impossible, I think, to exaggerate how fraught Keir Starmer's position is. I mean, a week ago, like last Friday, it looked like a good thing that he was going to be one of the first European leaders to sit down with Donald Trump. I'm not sure it does now. I don't think he can get out of it, but I wonder whether he'd like to. But let's presume he goes. Let's presume that Keir Starmer sits down with Donald Trump. And the question becomes, what should he say? How should he deal with the lies that Donald Trump has told this week? Just this week. Let's forget the rest of it. How on earth should he deal with the lies that Donald Trump has told this week? It's 19 minutes after 11. I've got a quick idiot's corner for you. Luke's been in touch. He says, you're losing your marbles, James. America voted for Trump on a scale even you couldn't imagine. And then he writes in capital letters, woke over. Yeah, you got me there, mate. I'm losing my marbles. Every single syllable of what I've just said is demonstrably true. Every single echo of Donald Trump's words is on the record and on tape. There's even photographs, if you want an indication of how ludicrous the lies are. There are photographs of Volodymyr Zelenskyy with the American envoy Scott Bessent, actual photographs. And Donald Trump claimed on Air Force One yesterday that Bessent travelled all the way to Kyiv and Zelenskyy wouldn't see him. There's literal photographs of the meeting, but the president will claim that the meeting never took place. That's how bonkers it is. But what on earth can Keir Starmer do? What on earth can he do in this space, in the space of the lies?